You could measure the strength of how much your customers love you. And you can measure it not by their promises to advocate, which is what the NPS score is, but you could measure what they actually do.
Welcome to Relationship Capitalists, where super connectors share how they build trust, create value, and thrive when AI changes everything. In a world where expertise is being commoditized, your ability to build and sustain high-value human connections is what sets you apart. I'm your host, Jason Masciarelli. Let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by Mark Organ, CEO and head coach at Categorynauts. Mark has founded 6 companies, raised more than 15 rounds of financing, hired over 250 people, built offices around the world, and helped create billion-dollar categories in technology. Now he coaches CEOs on growth, leadership, category creation, and personal performance. So today, we explore how relationship capital shapes category design, product market fit, CEO success, and how leaders can prepare themselves and the next generation for the age of AI. Let's dive in. Hey, Mark, great to have you on. Thanks for joining. I think it's been 20 years since we first met.
Yeah, it's amazing. We keep meeting in different places, different companies.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think the last time we saw each other was in Singapore, probably.
Yeah, I think I might have actually seen your wife somewhere at a conference in Boston. But you, I think you're right. It was in Singapore and at your great place up there at the North End. Yeah, it was good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. And let's jump into it. So I know you've been busy building companies. You've built a bunch of companies. You've raised funding. You're now focused on, creating new categories and coaching CEOs, right? And so when you look across all of it, what separates the leaders that thrive in the age of AI from the ones that you think will not do so well?
In some ways, I don't think AI is that different from other technological revolutions that we've had. And in other ways, it is different. So I think some of the same things that make leaders great in other technological revolutions, such as a lot of things you focus on, the ability to cultivate relationship capital, which I know we're going to talk about, but the ability to think strategically and logically and be able to work back towards a goal, and all of those things I think are still going to be present in the age of AI. But I think what AI does is, for me, the biggest difference is it allows me as one person to be like a one-man army. And it allows me to do things that before I would have had to hire experts or have consultants and whatnot. And now I have the ability to execute, what a team of 10 can do. And so I think probably the biggest difference is just the ability to be intrepid and just go out there and, what's the quote? You can just do things. Just do things. You don't have to wait for permission to do things. You can just get out there and do it. And I think that's one of the biggest differences between this technological revolution and previous ones.
When I was looking at your bio to get ready for this, I hadn't realized that you had founded 6 companies and done 15 rounds of financing. And that's pretty wild, because I think when you and I first met, I was starting my business and you were starting your first company, right? And I know you've really gotten into this idea of creating new categories. And from your first company, you were trying to create a new category, right? And so when did you really realize that was what you were passionate about, and that theme kind of, throughout your whole career?
I didn't actually realize it when I was building my first company. I thought that this is just the way that things ought to work. I don't know. And maybe, following my passion at Eloqua, what I was most excited about was a big idea. And the big idea is that you can have a repeatable and measurable way to generate demand. You don't have to wait for demand to come to you. You can go generate it yourself, and you can turn it into a process, and you can mechanize it in business to business. And so that category to be built around that. I didn't even really think about it as a category thing, even though we started as demand gen automation, and then it turned into marketing automation. And of course, marketing automation just blew up, and it's, I don't know what the value of the category is, 50 billion or something today. It wasn't until my second company, I started Influitive, and I got a call from Mike Creedon at Salesforce, who was Mike, yeah. He was at the time the big wig at Dreamforce. And he said, Mark, I'd love for you to do something around, the category, kind of what you build, marketing automation, and what you're working on today. And it was actually the first time where I really thought about kind of what I had done in my career. And then I did all kinds of research into how categories are essentially are created, or what I say is they're not actually created. I think they're discovered and they're popularized. But I, thought about what I had done at Eloqua and what I was doing now at Influitive, and I'd done a bunch of other research, and then said, "Wow, this actually is awesome!" Like, if you look at where most of the value is actually created in the world, it's actually created through new category development. And we think about, even in our lifetime, whether it's Uber creating, on-demand mobile transportation, or Tesla with all electric vehicles, or in our space in software and customer relationship management, or inbound marketing. I mean, these are categories that drive tens of billions of dollars in demand. And so I said, this is something I could really get behind in terms of kind of my life's work, a bigger picture than just me running companies, but the idea of understanding how categories are developed, and thought that I could drive a lot of value that way.
Awesome. And I know you're passionate about, helping leaders develop. And what have you seen over the years in terms of the connection between kind of their relationship skills, their ambition, and their personal growth journey in terms of their ability to get to success? And how do you work with leaders to get there?
How do I work with leaders? Is this around relationship capital and the connection to? I love this idea, because especially my second company, Influitive, was all about relationship capital with respect to a company's relationship capital, which is sort of my big idea. Like, one of the things that I noticed is that top salespeople had a lot of relationship capital that they developed, especially with the customers that they've satisfied before. And so that they could leverage those customers they satisfied before to help them win new customers. And I thought, well, companies also have relationship capital, and wouldn't it be amazing if they could truly harness that?
How did Influitive accomplish that?
So at Influitive, we did it pretty novel way, which was through communities. And the reason why we created a community, which no one had really ever done previously, there's a new category, but no one had ever really thought to use communities as a way to drive what is now called customer advocacy. And the reason why we did that, and it's kind of central to my thinking around how categories are developed, was because I talked to over 800 customer advocate people who were just like really crazy about companies that they loved. So there's some people that are like that just when they find a company they love, they are willing to spend an inordinate amount of time and their relationship capital to make that company successful. And so I asked these people, like, why do you do what you do? Yeah, why do you do like such 3 pieces of advocacy a week? Why do you do that? And so from my interviews with them, I codified a model, and that they wanted to be part of a team. They wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. They wanted to understand the impact that they're having on a company. It's why startups get so much more advocacy than big companies. As you're at Pega, it's a big company. You don't get as much advocacy as your startups that you've built.
I led a startup within Pega, and what's interesting is we got a lot more advocacy for that small group than the overall company. So I totally get it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's because of this move the meter. They really move the meter, and it makes them feel more important and valued and all of that. And then the third thing is that they improve their life because of the advocacy that they do. So when you have those 3 elements in place, people's advocacy just goes nuts. Like, they'll do 5 or 10 times more than they normally would. And so I thought, well, how do we do that? How do we give these people the experience that they want? And so the best way to do that is with a community. So that way they feel like they're part of the team, that we give them feedback on how they're doing, and that they can tell the company, here's how to make my life better. Here's what I need. And then the company can give them what they need. And so that's why it ended up being a novel solution. And one of my big ideas around category design, again, is that they're discovered. and they're popularized as opposed to create. People talk about category creation. It sounds good. It rolls off the tongue, category creation. But again, I don't think they're actually really created in the same way that a new continent is not created. It's discovered and then we popularize it. And so one of my big ideas is that new categories are actually built around special people that I call the underserved hero. And so these are people that, because of advancements, often in technology, but also in society, big trends that are happening in the world, these people get elevated. They become more powerful and they become more numerous. And so you'll see that, for example, at Eloqua, that was the demand generation person, which is now like a function that's totally blown up. At Influitive, it was customer marketing. That was a tiny backwater of a function. This was like the person who did case studies or set up references. This became a heroic thing. Okay, this became something where this person could now help salespeople close deals, could help generate leads, could help. In so many ways, help build a better product. There's so many ways that activated customers could help. And so what I did is really focus on these two people. One is the super advocate, which is an underserved hero. Like, those are people that were and still are not well recognized by companies. Okay, like you probably could do a better job with those people who are super excited about all the companies you built. You could have probably done a better job of giving them the feelings that they wanted, the experience that they wanted. And if you gave it to them, they'll do way more for you. So that was one underserved hero. And another one is the customer marketer, which we at Influitive really transformed into a very powerful function where so the same person that might retweet something, could also do a 5-star review for you online, could also get on stage, could help you with your product, could help you with your pricing. The book that I wrote, The Messenger is a Message, was co-written mostly with my customers who filled in all these stories and data and all kinds of stuff that really made the book kind of, what it is.
That's awesome.
That's kind of how those things tie together.
Yeah. And it's interesting as you tell the story, because it ends up being a way of depositing value for those advocates, right? Because they feel validated, they feel engaged, and like you said, they're underserved a bit, right? And so it's a way of elevating them.
Absolutely. We talk sort of Clark Kent to Superman. Like, in their day job, they're like the third stringer junior accountant or something. But when they're advocating for the accounting software they love, they're a hero. They're a superstar. It's one of the reasons why they do what they do, is that they have a sense of identity, with the company. But there's a big tie between advocacy and relationship capital. And so companies have this relationship capital. So I love this phrase, relationship capital, because that feels like something that can be quantified. And so that was probably one of the biggest ideas. I think I had never really fully developed that Influitive, but the idea that you could measure this, you could measure the strength of how much your customers love you. And you can measure it not by their promises to advocate, which is what the NPS score is, but you could measure what they actually do. And then you could track your kind of funnel. Like, you could say, hey, this month we added these new advocates into the funnel. And then these ones we've developed further, and so on. So I like the idea of capital. Capital is an asset. And so as an individual, I have an asset in terms of the relationships I have. And as a company, we also have a relationship asset that can be monetized not by what they buy from us, although that helps. But in many cases, the advocacy that these customers did was a several fold of whatever ARR they paid. The number of new customers they were able to win, the help. I got a message from the COO of Okta after it went public. And he told me that if it wasn't for the community that they were running, that it would not have happened, or it would have happened 2 years later.
It gives me chills. That's awesome. That's awesome.
It was pretty cool. And it was actually really interesting because for some reason that I don't fully understand, it's not little anymore. Okta's a big company. When they signed on with me, there were 100 people. They became a pretty big company. But for some reason, this little area of the kind of security that they do, for some reason, like, Out of 10 companies in that space, 7 of them used our product. And to this day, I don't really understand why we were so popular there. Probably one of the reasons is because there's a lot of rivalry in that space, and so they're all beating each other up, and they all need more weaponry. But there's probably more than that. So their competitors were also using it, but they were using it better. And one of the ways they used it better is they had their head of product marketing running it. And so often the people who are running our community were actually demand gen because we generated a lot of referral leads. And so referral leads are like money in the bank. At Okta, they had a brilliant head of product marketing, which is kind of the most strategic person typically I think, in a software company. They're really smart people. They do all the messaging and positioning and pricing and packaging and all of that. So because of that, they really use the community strategically and not just, hey, go generate some leads for us, which is not super exciting. But they had them redesign their pricing. They had them redesigning their messaging. And one of the things that they did is they had a contest to see who could design the best ad for Okta. And so they had all these like network engineer, like neckbeard guys like designing ads. And some of these ads became award winning. And I don't even understand them because I'm not a network engineer, but it really allowed the Okta people to get into the heads of their customers and to understand the way that they thought. And that's what the COO told me. The COO told me is we understand our customers better than all of our competitors. But he pointed to this ad thing. It's like when we saw those ads, that's when we got it. That's when we actually understood the way our customers thought because they speak their language. And so anyway, that was pretty cool that we're able to drive that kind of value.
Clearly, you've built a lot of relationship capital personally, in order to raise 15 rounds of funding. So if you reflect on your career, how would you say what's been effective for you in terms of building up your relationship capital, in terms of trust and, having a network that you could go back to and raise capital and start companies and build teams and so on?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one thing is, man, I could do so much a better job than what I've been doing. One of my commitments that I just made to my coach, which is that I'm really going to work on my relationship capital this year. And for example, not just call people when I need something from them. That's something that frankly, way too much of us do, maybe men in particular. I think women are better at just saying, hey, let's just talk, right? When was the last time you called up a dude and said, hey, let's just talk? I mean, I do it sometimes, but not that often. So that's one thing. I think one thing is reaching out to people to help them, as opposed to, hey, I need a hand in something. One of the things I used to do, man, I should do it again. But for a while, I just did office hours. In fact, I'm trying to remember even what the name of the tool was, but there was this new tool that came out that allowed anybody to broadcast really easily and be able to take questions and whatnot. I don't remember the name of it. But that was really cool. So it was just called Beers with Mark, and I would just literally be in a pub with beer, and I would just open up AMA where people could just ask me anything. And honestly, that drove a lot of relationship capital. There's all these people who, they were asking me questions, but guess what? 4 or 5 years later, they're now running significant companies, or they're investors, or they're doing something else. And, those are people who come back and say, hey, remember that time? You really helped me out, that time.
Just you kind of leverage a one-to-many model, but it turned into one-to-one relationships that the other people felt like they were getting value and they had a connection to you.
Exactly. Yeah. And now that I'm saying it, I am going to do that again because that was such a good use of time. Again, it was 1 hour a week. And frankly, I need a rest. I need to rest and have a beer anyway. So I as well do that. But yeah, the number of new relationships, and people could also come to the pub physically. So I'm in Toronto. They could come to the pub physically, or they could reach me online. And man, I'm totally going to do that again. That was a really good use of time. Obviously doing what you say you're going to do. If you've made money for people in the past, they're going to be available in the future. I remember when I was raising my seed round at Influitive, Harry Weller, may rest in peace. He's a NEA, but he told the startup guys at NEA, I don't care what Mark's working on, just give him money. Just write him a check. So to me, that's relationship capital, right? It doesn't even care what it is I'm working on. He just believes in me. I think, a focus on I try to add value in every conversation I have. Like before this, it's like, how do I add the most value possible to Jason? How do I, you know, it's not what do I want to get out of this? It's how do I drive more value for you? If I drive more value for you, chances are I'll get some slice of that in some way, shape, or form, somewhere else. So I think an attitude of that, which is, two things I think about a lot in business. How do I drive more measurable fundamental value for people? And the other one is how do I give people a better experience? I think if you're driving value and experience, like you are going to be successful in life. And experience is not just a business thing; it's also a personal thing. How do I drive a better experience for my family, my kids, whatever, for my coworkers? So I think that increases your relationship capital.
Yeah, it's not just about the deal at hand or providing value that's always financial. There's all these other areas and aspects of value in terms of enriching their experience, like you said, and their life journey. So as you work with founders, do you see relationship capital fitting into a company getting to product market fit faster or getting funding faster? What do you think some of the big levers are?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I think driving relationship capital improves your ability to hire, especially if you think about the executives that you brought on. So chances are you brought on some executives before in your business that you had no business bringing on. You were way too early. They might have been getting paid way more. They took a big pay cut to join you. Why? Well, it's because trust. That's exactly it. That they believe that you are going to take care of them. And so I think cultivating a reputation of taking care of people allows you to surround yourself with the best people. And if you want to get to product market fit faster, you need to have really good people around you. So I think that's a big one. I think customer advocacy, the way that I defined, it is just me, but the way I define customer advocacy at Influitive, it's any non-financial investment that a company or person makes in your company. So it's not just that they say good things about you to people. It's customers make all kinds of investments back into you. I mean, think about, chances are the best product features you ever built did not come from your head. Probably, yeah. They're really come from two places. One is from your customers, and the other one is from the people who interface with your customers, like the sales reps, the customer success reps, customer success managers. Typically, is where the best features, ideas come from, not from the product people either. And that's their job. But, you'll find them in hackathons and all kinds of stuff like that, right? But if you're building something such that your customers want to invest back into you, they want to give you high quality feedback on the product, they do recommend it to others, then you're going to get to fit faster. Yeah. I mean, and that's why I in my product market fit process, I really try to find or help my clients find a narrow niche. The idea is, what's the center of the bullseye? The bullseye of the bullseye. What is that niche where we drive overwhelming good value and experience, which is also going to drive more relationship capital? If you're in a tiny niche, people are like, wow, I really have to make sure that I invest back in this company. I want to make sure that they stick around. And so I think you're more likely to develop relationship capital and advocacy if you sort of pick something smaller and figure out what is the center of the bullseye for, not just my target market niche, but how I price and package and message and all of that sort of thing.
How do you see that AI helps people with developing relationship capital today? Like, are there ways that you see it as an assistant as opposed to what people are doing in terms of, AI slop and spam cannons and all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting because I have not used AI for that, and I really should. I mean, I should. That would be really interesting to, because you're right. Like I do have. I mean, one of the challenges I think in my network is that I know a lot of people, and I can get to almost anybody. I have tens of thousands of connections, but I don't have a lot of depth to them, and that would be really interesting to use AI to figure out how to deepen relationships. I'll give you an example of where we didn't use AI, but we used a smart human. But today, for sure, an AI can do what she did. So it was an office manager. And so Jason Lemkin, you probably know, I really wanted Jason to be an investor in my company. There's a lot of things I appreciate about him. And so yeah, and he invited me to SaaStr when it was pretty early, and I got on stage. It was pretty nice, and so I came back and said, I want to give a nice gift for Jason. So I asked my office manager, says, because he already has everything, um, you know, I want you to find something personal that we can give him. And so she went on to all of his socials at the time and found that he was actually restoring an old car, which is amazing. There's not a lot of people of our vintage that actually knows how to do anything with a car. And so he was a big fan of this car. And so basically took that image of the car that he was restoring, and we use it to wrap a suitcase, like a carry-on bag, and we shipped him the carry-on bag. I mean, honestly, it was probably like $80 or something like that. He loved this thing. I mean, there's so much social media of him carrying his carry-on bag with his little cars on it and stuff like that. Yeah, pretty cool. So that took pretty smart, a high EQ human being. It took her, maybe a couple of hours to find out what the hot thing was, and then maybe a little more time to go and make the suitcase. But, imagine going to your entire contact list and LinkedIn and all your socials and whatnot, and say, what's the one best way that I might have of deepening each relationship here? And then maybe draft something that, of course, we'll edit or whatnot. But that would be, that's something that I think would be really interesting to do. I wonder if anyone's doing that.
Do you have like a inner circle of 20 or 30 people that you kind of really focus on? Or is it, kind of like many people, like we've got thousands of people in our network, but, we forget to kind of cultivate kind of the vital few?
It's really more the latter. And I do think that automation can help a lot. I'm thinking another fellow, I don't know if you know Oren Hoffman at all. Yeah, he's been in the news lately because he's involved in the Dialogue conference, which is now all over the news. But experienced investor and entrepreneur in the Valley. And one of the things that always amazed me is that, and this is before the age of AI, but every year for my birthday, I got a note from him. On my anniversary, I forgot my own anniversary. If it wasn't for him, I'd forget my anniversary. So it was good that he would send me a note. And he would send it the day before, which is nice. So, so then I would know the next day it's anniversary. And his network is absolutely massive. So no doubt that he used a lot of automation, and he has a longtime assistant, sort of doing that. And so, I think those would be great things to do. But yeah, my network is unfortunately pretty small, and I wish I did more to cultivate it. And this is actually inspiring me, to do more, to do that. Because when I think about, my success in life, a lot of it really is about relationship capital. Even that relationship with Oren itself, like that was me doing it was me finding him at the time in Facebook, and saw that he's like was at the time one of these very rare conservatives in Silicon Valley, and so or libertarian to say at the time. So reached out to him on that. I'm a fan of freedom too, and that's kind of how it started, was with a little bit of shoe leather. But yeah, I think using AI strategically, specifically to build up relationship capital, and maybe quantify it and say, well, what is my relationship quotient this month? Where was it, last quarter?
That's what I'm working on, Mark. I'll have to connect
cool.
and share it with you. Yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's a winner of an idea. Absolute winner of an idea. I love it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. I met your kids when they were really small. Now they're teenagers, right? My two sons are in their early mid 20s. They're both out of college now. And we talk about AI all the time, and they follow everything that's happening. What are your thoughts on kind of how their world changes, and some things that you're doing to prepare your kids for this new kind of world?
Yeah. Similar to you, I spend a lot of time with them really thinking through what are areas that are going to be augmented by AI as opposed to replaced by AI. So my daughter, she's mechanical engineering, which I think is good. I think it's one of the areas where I like physical things. And I know there's robots and robots are doing cool shit. I get it. And maybe one day there'll be robotic plumbers and electricians and whatever, but it's going to be a while. And so, even there, I had a conversation. This is what's hard for AI to do in mechanical engineering. And where we came to together was, anything involving the body. So the biomedical side of mechanical engineering is going to take the longest for AI to do any replacement. And at the same time, it's where AI can actually drive a lot more incremental value. So it's a very simple framework. I use it a lot in my investing as well. So buying into, for example, like you've probably seen that there's a SaaScopolis where just all SaaS companies just got murdered for a while, and the baby was thrown out with the bathwater. Some of those companies really deserve it. Like some of those companies really deserve to get their 90% haircut. Others did not. And so even looking there, it's like who is likely to actually who's now undervalued because AI is actually a help and is highly unlikely to replace. So that's one, and then second is similar to you is like how can we use AI in order to do our job better? One idea that I've employed that I really like is a virtual advisory board. And so the idea here is that whatever it is that you're trying to do. So if Sky, my daughter is, she's joined a team to work on, I think it's a solar car or something. They race a solar car in the desert. She could actually build a virtual advisory board to ask them questions and say, how would my board do this problem? How would they look at this problem? And so you could have them look at it in different angles. And you can do that for anything. Like even let's say, I don't know, your relationship with your wife. You could have different experts and say, okay, I want to write something to her. I want to make her feel really good about the situation. What do you guys think? And you get sort of different points of view based on everything that they've ever written, like everything that John Gottman is master of marriage. Everything he's ever written and said, it's online. So you can have a virtual John Gottman whispering in your ear, advising you on how to position something.
So like an AI advisory board, you're saying?
Exactly. An AI advisory board. Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe that doesn't sound romantic, but I think it's romantic to set up systems that give people a better experience. I think that's romantic. Yeah. I don't think it has to necessarily come off the top of my head. I think that shows a lot of love and care, personally. But yeah.
And great for people in their career or leaders or founders. Like everybody could use a group of experts.
Yeah, exactly. And then these are people, so unlike, you and I both have had advisory boards, like physical advisory boards before, and they're good, add value. We end up giving whatever, a few percent equity, to folks. But generally, it's like 20% of the advisors are driving 80% of the value. You also have where, it takes a while to get people up to speed again about what's going on in your business and this sort of thing. The great thing about your AI board is like they know what's going on. They're up to date about what's going on in your life. You upload all your documents to it, all kinds of things like that. So I think it's a powerful idea. I had a client or ex-client that had some trouble with their cash. They created a virtual me. They created like a virtual Mark Organ based on which is, and then I'm not able to monetize anymore because all this stuff's out there. But, they could say, and maybe what I really should do is I should create a virtual Mark Organ and maybe find a monetization model for that. Because see, this way they could ask me a question at 3 a.m. They don't have to wait for a weekly call. So no, I think this is a big idea. I think that the virtual advisory board, the virtual advisor, where you have on-demand expertise available at any one time, I think is a big idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So, specific to building relationship capital, are there any things that you'd recommend to a CEO or a founder that could be like a daily habit that they could do to help them be more successful?
Oh, daily habits, interesting. Before I go to the daily habit, I talk about a couple of other ones, and maybe not daily, but as I think about some of the things that, especially in this idea of depth over breadth. But one of the things that, and I learned it from one of my investors, but is whenever I go to another city, try to set up a dinner, like a group dinner, um, and I found those to be very high return, because you really get to know people well. It's not that expensive, um, and that sort of builds that depth where I think even a few years later, it's really not awkward at all to reach back out, to people who do that. And one of the things that I did in my company, sort of relationship capital for my employees, was writing handwritten notes. And maybe in this age of AI, this sort of thing matters even more. If we can even write anymore, like my writing sucks, handwriting is so bad. But it back to the sort of idea of a process. I created an amazing, very efficient process for this. I wrote 5 thank you cards every single week to employees. So I'd show up on Monday, my chief of staff at first, and then eventually it was not my chief of staff. It was just like the office manager, which made it even better. But I would get, here are the 5 people that we think should be recognized. Here's why they should be recognized, and so on. I would write the notes. Sometimes there'd be a little gift card in there, sometimes not. People really cherish these things, and they would show their parents and all. Yeah, I mean, that's another thing I learned, right? Is that the best gifts you can give people are the ones that give them relationship capital. Okay, so those are the best. Like, vendors, my vendors would give me like a seat in the like box seat in whatever sports game, but there'd be another seat for my son or daughter, you know, would be great. Look, daddy's awesome. That's why we're sitting here at the game. Or we one of the things that we gave to our employees that were doing a great job is we give them dinner for 2 at a fancy restaurant. They had to bring a +1. It's the +1 is all the value. Look, anybody can afford to eat at a nice restaurant, right? That's not a big deal. The bigger deal is like, I got this, and I can bring you because of the work that that I did. So yeah, giving people, making people look good in front of people that they care about. Another one, for example, is giving at a company level, giving your customer free training for their people. Now you make the manager look awesome. You got free training because of the work that we've done. So, again, like relationship capital is stuff that, well, I say it's not true that money can't buy it, because you probably can buy it to some degree. But it's certainly much harder to buy. It's more difficult to buy. It really has to be earned.
You have to earn it over time. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you have to earn it over time. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So maybe there's one or multiple you want to mention, but are there specific relationships that have had big impact on your life and your career that gave you a strategic advantage or took your life in a different trajectory?
I started Eloqua when I was actually in the Bain office, which was really weird at the time. It's because they were losing all these people to startups. But, so I had earned some relationship capital through my work at Bain. And then as a result, I got a number of people investing, and one of the senior partners joined my board. And that was life-changing. I had someone on my board that had no business being on my board. He's on the board of public companies that are worth tens of billions of dollars. There's an example there. I think also the chairman of the board that I had at Influitive was someone that I served on a board at another company. And so, that was life-changing. And again, that's probably another example of having earned relationship capital, where he was impressed with me and I was impressed with him. And then as a result, he's on my board, and typically I'm not the kind of company he would be on the board of. I can think of some amazing employees that I've hired, many of whom started out as my customers first, and then joined as, incredible employees that have.
A great
Those are
example.
some I could. Yeah, I mean, my coach Bob Kramer is a Boston guy. I don't know if you know Bob. He's a 5-time venture-backed CEO in Boston. Yeah, so he was my coach, and then really because of him, I decided to become a coach myself after leaving Influitive, and so that has also changed my life. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Often I think people talk so much about the tech and tactics and all this stuff, but I think often success is based on some of these foundational moments that people have, really good relationship capital that took their lives in a different direction.
yeah, it's really true. I think you're on a big idea. I mean, I love the idea of quantifying your relationship capital and then developing actionable plans to increase it.
Yeah, and being intentional about it.
Yeah, I mean, I know from my own experience because in a way, Influitive was gamifying relationship capital, but a little bit different. But I've seen the value of being able to quantify something that wasn't quantifiable before, and then showing a very clear path for how you build it. And really, it's what leadership is. I mean, to me, leadership is all about. It's pretty simple. It's establishing a bold, compelling vision for something, and then a clear path to get there. That's it. And so, that's kind of what I think what you're doing. I mean, I can imagine a bold vision of saying, imagine you with all this much more relationship capital than you have today. Imagine what your world's going to look like. Okay, and now I'm going to show you how to get there. I'm I'm interested. I can't wait to see your prototype or whatever it is that you're building, because I'm definitely interested in it.
Yeah, happy to share. Yeah, awesome. This is great, Mark. Thank you so much. What a pleasure to reconnect. And
yeah,
we'll definitely connect. I'll keep you updated on how things progress, and I'd love to, see you sometime when I'm in Toronto.
Can't wait.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thanks. Take care. Good luck.
Thanks. Wow, what an awesome conversation with Mark Organ. Today's episode reminded us that category creation is not just strategy. It's a relationship-driven act of belief, advocacy, trust, and leadership. Mark's work shows that CEOs need more than capital, execution systems, and market insight. They need strong relationships, personal resilience, and the judgment to use AI without losing the human edge. To help us grow the community, please take 30 seconds to follow, subscribe, and especially leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help us build this channel. It's the best way to support the show. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Relationship Capitalists. If today's conversation sparked something for you, the best way to invest in your own relationship capital is simple. Share this episode with one person in your network who needs to hear it. To learn more about how to build and scale your relationship capital through proven frameworks and simple daily actions, visit relationshipcapital.com. And if you haven't already, search for Relationship Capitalists on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. And hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Relationship Capitalists is produced by Fane, the B2B podcast agency that grows your business. I'm Jason Masciarelli. Thanks for being here.